Should we roll?
Mine as well.
Yeah. Jaime, are we recording?
Yeah, we're in minute 12.
Minute 12. Well, shit, all of this is on footage, but well, yeah. We good? Anyone need a top off?
Yeah, I would love a top off.
Pause.
You first, Biscuit.
I still got a little going on over here.
Yeah, get in there.
Do you know his nickname?
I don't know. Which one is it?
Biscuit.
Yeah, I was about to say. I just heard
Biscuit.
that.
Biscuit.
Biscuit.
From here on out, this entire podcast, I will be referring to him by his government name, which is Biscuit.
Biscuit. So we got Biscuit Tex.
And what do we call you?
I think mine's always just been a derivative of my last name. Hugs. Hugo.
Hugs.
Hugs.
Who
That
the
was-
fuck called you Hugs?
Well, my dad. So my dad's license plate, which was the car I drove in high school. This was back in the day when you could request license plates, but if you didn't pay for it, you wouldn't necessarily get it.
Uh-huh.
But they gave you close. In his case, so he asked for Hugo 52 because my last name's Hugo, and 52 is the year my dad was born. And so the license plate said Hug 115, which 5 plus 2 backwards is 52. So everyone kind of just thought it was hilarious. I just drove around this car that just said Hug. So I got Hugs, and it makes sense with the last name. So Biscuit, Tex, Hugs. It sounds
Hey.
like, yeah.
It's just like the S Baby. Remember the S Baby?
Q baby.
Oh, the car. College.
The
Colorado.
Texmobile.
No, I had the Texmobile. Tommy had the S Baby.
Oh,
You forgot about that?
I never heard of that shit.
Oh, shit.
What is the S, baby? We got to go.
It was another same story.
Yeah.
Somebody we knew got a car from their mom.
Yeah.
And whatever it was, her nickname was S Baby. So he drove around with something called the S Baby. And
Wasn't it
this-
like it wasn't like a Miata? Or,
It was like a Miata.
It was like a little.
It was.
I miss college.
Oh God. Anyway,
Yeah.
let's talk about something real.
Yeah, let's talk about something real. But welcome. Yeah, this is our kickoff to season 2. Season 2, man, is arbitrary. There's no requirement of how many episodes are on a season. So if I wanted to make the next one season 3, we could. Could be the shortest season ever, but this is officially the kickoff to season 2. We got here.
We're here.
We're here.
We made it.
We'll just bring a little bit of background. There was a lot of whispering winds the last 2 attempts to get the show off the ground.
Can we talk about that for a quick second?
Yeah, let's get. So we're gonna start off with. I got to get this off my chest. Jamelle, why don't you start? Maybe you need to get this off your chest.
I'm gonna definitely pause that, but
Yeah, I still don't. So you're gonna have to.
now we're good. We're just
awaken
gonna
me
rock
on
with
that
it.
one.
Shout out to our 2 guests that were supposed to come the original time that we were scheduled to do this 3 weeks ago. And then tonight, for those of you that don't know, we're in Denver, Colorado right now. We're on the brink of Snowmageddon. And our guest that was supposed to come through tonight could not make it because they had some extenuating. So shout out to Jamie Shaw on the producing the noises in the background.
Yeah, guys, we're bringing it in season 2. Sound effects and everything.
So yeah, shout out to those 2. Appreciate y'all ducking out on us, but we'll get y'all somewhere in season 2.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, the background to that one is we attempted to get this off the ground a few times, but Jamelle came through. We have a guest with us tonight, Jared. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Can I get something off my chest?
Yes, I would love to hear that. Get it off your chest, man.
So this whole podcast thing was sold to me as we've been thinking about you. You're the perfect guy. You're full of personality, character. You are what the people want to hear. And then I get on the podcast and I hear a whole dialogue from my friend Biscuit, who starts this thing off by saying, shout out to all the people who didn't show up. Initially, he was going to introduce me, but then he
That's all we
shouted
needed.
out all the other people who didn't show up, and I am,
Yeah,
I'm the
you gotta
second. I'm
yeah.
Mr. Irrelevant. I'm Brock Purdy right now, and I just got to try to overcome because I'm the last pick in the draft, but I get it. I'm just grateful, Mr. Goodell Biscuit, you invited me.
You just need to perform is all we really need you to do.
This is
to
your
this
Super Bowl.
podcast, so I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So you know what? I'm not going to call you a liar. I'm just going to say I think that may be an untruth.
But perhaps a misrepresentation. Well, you know what? I respect it because you saw right through it. Yeah, that's just, we can't bullshit you, but we are appreciating that you are here, and that is worth more than anything else. So thanks for being here, man.
So welcome
Thank
to
you.
season 2.
Welcome to season 2.
Yeah.
So I got to get this off my chest. Fucking car dealerships and auto places, man. I just spent a day. I almost want to like use the name of this business and like hashtag them in this fucking podcast. Lindy's like, I don't want to even hear about it. Just write your negative review on Google and let's just move on with life. But I'm going to get it off on the public airwaves. So I've been leasing cars for a few years because I don't like dealing with repairs. I just like the game of like, what is this going to cost me? What bullshit are they going to tell me about this? So I lease mine. Lindy has an older Nissan, and so last week the HVAC, like the heating and the cooling system, just kept blowing at full blast. It wouldn't turn off. It just was going. So, you know, depending upon,
You were getting blown all the time.
full blown. And the helpful internet basically told me what it was. They said, this is the car, this is what's happening, this is the diagnosis, right? But you got to go to dealerships and or car places. I try to support local business. We found a few places nearby. Went to the first place, and so they charge you this diagnostic fee.
Yep.
I'm like, I could tell you what this is.
Still got.
And they're like, yeah, we got to do it. $190
Yep.
just to look at the fucking car for probably 4 minutes. And then they give me this quote, and the quote was way over the top. Like this part I saw online, even full like factory owned, like factory delivered, $110, charging $300 just for the part, like 160% markup. And then the labor was high, but not maybe unreasonable. So I
Good
called
math by you, by the way.
Yeah, man. I called 2 other places. The dealership was 40% less. And then another shop that I went with was like 20% less than the dealership. So I had to pay that money today, and I just took the car back, and I'm taking it to another place who would do the full job and still save me $200. And I was just like, what are you guys doing?
So you're saving $200 on a blowjob.
On a blower job.
Yes.
On a blower job. So I had to get that off my chest. If you've had negative experiences with car salespeople,
Leave it down in the comments.
leave it in the comments. We're still waiting for our second. We're third. 2 comments, 2 guests. So I'm going to plug it. If you want to get on the podcast, just leave us a comment. And we're working on our virtual opportunities to do so. But hey, I do want to give Jared a proper introduction. So Jamelle, if you don't mind telling our listeners a little bit about your background with Jared and why, a little bit more about him for all of us who are listening.
This is my good friend Jared. We've known each other for upwards of 25-ish years.
Make us sound old.
I'm not old. I'm seasoned. You guys are old. About 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
We actually are technically neighbors. Maybe not grew up, but lived 6 houses from each other.
I mean, if you go diagonally, I think it's
2 houses from each other.
That's awesome. All right.
Went to college together. We're in high school together. Went to college together, and have worked together in some facet or the other for the past 10 years. And great confidant, great friend. He thinks he's funny. I don't know if he's actually that funny, but I mean, we're here now.
I will be the judge of that.
You definitely will.
Well, Jared, thanks for being on the show. When you think about podcasts, what words come to mind?
Perspective.
Mm.
Right? I think when you look at the general media, right, there's a certain almost schedule that they have to abide by, routine, right? A way that they give their so-called truth, right? What I like about a podcast is you could be you can say what you want because you are the content creator, you are the producer, and not everybody's going to agree with what you say, but people can understand who you are and take things from that and use it the way they will. Maybe it helps for growth. Maybe it's motivation. Maybe it's to be funny. Maybe it's to think about an alternative way to approach things. But I think you get more genuine authenticity during a podcast.
That's a cool perspective.
Except for if you're listening to this.
And possibly people walking by in the street.
Yeah.
Is that what we were listening to right
Yeah.
now? James, shout out Jamie Shaw. We didn't talk about him in the intro.
Yeah, Jamie's back as our producer in season 2. He's coming in with all sorts of new ideas, new perspectives as well. But to Jared, your point, yeah, I think that's right. And I'm still figuring out this genre. I'm still figuring out like the whole art, if you will, of producing this form of media. And the fun of podcasting for me is, one, I think it is an opportunity for that creative expression. Like for the listeners tonight, we had a plan A until 7:30.
Yep.
And now we're here rolling through this and finding ways to be creative, working together, listening to each other. I think this conversation, like hopefully all of them, is some form of like an organic, authentic direction.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, please.
Along those lines, with you being the creator and I would say the originator of this podcast, how do you feel knowing that you are now part of the media?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting. It's an interesting question. I think the struggle for me has been figuring out more of the social media side of it. I don't know if I have thought as much about the media with a capital M. I think for me, this sits in kind of a weird spot in its goal and in the ecosystem in which we're operating. I think the goal has been to produce something authentic, right? Not a lot of pretense. Yeah, there's a little bit of preparation. But there's not a whole, like, we kind of let the conversation go where it does. And I don't think we're trying to, like, pick topics or tag things that are for the wider user ecosystem.
I was saying I will push back on that because, like, you got to understand that regardless of what our intentions are, which I think are pure, this is still still going to be consumed by somebody.
It is. It
right?
is. And that's the tension, because I also, when I sit down and I try to extend the audience, Jamie and I spend a lot of time thinking about how are we figuring out the social media space and Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat and other tools that are TikTok. What is it that actually gets people to listen?
Right.
And as much as I want to in life say, hey, there's something to be gained from just like the connection. Our audience, myself included, when we think about our evening routine, like we flip through, 400 videos in like 400 seconds. You're like, this is boring. This isn't for me yet. And I think that it's a challenge to sit in the space of creating this media, but also creating it for an audience who also wants and needs things. And I think that's the challenge.
I was going to say, Jared, in your profession, how have you seen the media, specifically social media, affect what it is that you do every day?
I think that's a hard question because I can only say that as a person who consumes media. I don't think my profession has anything to do with how each person. Go ahead.
I was gonna say it has to affect the way that you operate, right? In order to get your job done, do you use social media, or is social media an aspect of your job?
Yes. I think that everybody. So for people who don't know, I'm a tech recruiter. Social media in the sense for me is like LinkedIn. Unless I'm looking for somebody in a creative space, a marketing space, and then maybe I may leverage more tools like Instagram or what their social media presence may be. But ultimately, I do leverage the internet to qualify who people are, who they aren't.
Tell me more about that.
Well, I mean, you can Google anything, right?
Right.
And so,
as a recruiter, do you Google people that you're interested in?
No, but I mean, Google is it's a platform, right? So like even if I LinkedIn you, I'm still using some type of search capability. So I'm not specifically talking to the company, but I'm more so saying at the end of the day, if you send me a resume and you say that I am the director of so-and-so ABC company, I can very easily Google or search that company to see if you're actually the director of that company, right? And so I think it's more used as a tool to qualify and validate that the information that you sent me is actually you are who you say you are. Obviously, there's bad actors out there that could manipulate data. When this isn't a discussion on security or anything like that. But at the end of the day, yes, I do use the internet, and it could include social media to validate whether people say who they are, who they aren't from a professional perspective.
Thanks, Jared. I think, that again, I think that we all have this tenuous balance with like how much is too much, how much is not enough. And let me go back to your question though, Jamelle, about media with that kind of the capital M. How do you feel about, I mean, this is part of it. What are your feelings on media with that capital M?
And I'm not trying to be difficult here, but
no, please.
We all may have 3 different definitions of what media is with the capital M.
Yeah.
And so I think in order to constructively have this conversation, I'd like you to give more insight around what are you saying? That's a very broad term. Define media for us.
Yeah, right
with
on.
a capital M.
I think, because a lot of times I think like something that's going to be consumed, I guess, to answer your question, what is the definition of media? Information, something out there that people are going to take in and get information from it or form an opinion of because of it.
Cool. And I'm going to drill down a little further. Getting information.
Right.
So when we talk about information, right, we're essentially talking about either data or conversation, video, whatever it may be. But is there a definition on what is media information and what is not media information? Or is it all information considered media?
I don't know.
Here's what I go with this because I love sports. When I talk about the media in sports, I'm thinking about reporters and ESPN. But there's just as many podcasters.
That's where I was kind of
who are also considered media.
Right.
And I think oftentimes people have definitions on what media means, where they may say movies aren't media, that's entertainment, but a podcast is media. And I would argue
it's still
that
entertainment.
the one thing that every mode or channel of media has is the fact it's entertainment. It has to capture my attention, whether the information is meant to get a reaction out of me, to a call to action rather, or whether it's just to be funny. The entertainment in itself means my job is to capture people's attention.
So what is news?
Entertainment, and that's where I was going with that.
Well, go ahead.
It is entertainment because how can the same company tell you the news and then put a sitcom afterwards?
So my question then is,
produced by the same people, owned by the same people.
So how are you supposed to get information that is not entertainment?
And that is the golden question of why I asked the question that I asked, because at the end of the day, I think we should start replacing the word media with the word entertainment, because ultimately, even if it's truthful, it has to be spoken in a way to capture my attention.
Right.
It's why most people don't listen to NPR and other people's do, because you usually have somebody that, and then today's news we have, and it's like, I don't know if this is a TED Talk or one of the spoken word things to help you go to sleep at night, those podcasts like Headspace or something like that. Like, you don't know. You have to portray it in a way that is entertaining.
Hugo.
No, I think where you're going at this with is right. I think if media at large is simply the definition of like relaying information, that's fine. But I think media has a connotation, right? And I think it has a connotation that sits, and in a number of places, but to the news side of media, there still is kind of an assumption that there's an element of truth within it, right? People depend on the category of news to be a means of relaying factual information that is required for a democratic society to work, like democratic with a lowercase d.
Pause.
And we'll sit there. But I think that when you think about the need to be explicit about what are we really doing, because a lot of people are making assumptions that what they're being told is truth.
I love the word assumption, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of your points was there's an assumption that it has to be true. What I would argue is the assumption, whether it's true or not, doesn't really matter. What matters is whether I'm telling you something that is true or not telling you something that is true, I better make my delivery captivating or entertaining, or I'm not going to pay attention. And I think we spend a lot of time figuring out what is real or not real or fact-checked or whatever. And this isn't me pitching a side or an opinion. I'm just rather from a 10,000-foot view, if I separate myself from what I think, media has to be entertaining.
So on that note of entertainment, real quick, Hugo, what are we drinking as we're being entertained right now?
Yeah, so we're drinking whiskey. So for first-time listeners, for Jared, I think I was giving you a little overview of the show, but this is actually a part of it that we've stayed consistent with, is whiskey. So whiskey became something that years ago during the pandemic, one of our former guests, good friend of ours, Jamelle's, mine, Jaime's, Sean Smith, was really into bourbon and bourbon tasting, and he built up a bit of a collection. And so I started tasting a lot of that with him, and we would go sit on the patio and talk about how it's made and what tasting differences are. So one of the things we've done on every show is incorporate some discussion about bourbon or whiskey. And more specifically, I want to say 80% of the episodes we've done have been Colorado bourbon, because there's actually a really cool whiskey scene in Colorado. There's a lot of distilleries. If you picture like Denver 15 to 20 years ago, when the first like waves of the brewery kind of industry were coming in, there was like 4 breweries when I moved here in 2009. And now there's, 409 breweries or whatever the number is. It's a ton. And distilleries are, I think, in their first kind of insurgence, if you will, in the Denver scene, in the Colorado scene. So that being said, we actually started with not a Colorado bourbon, Heaven Hill, the Kentucky bourbon, Heaven Hill bottled and bond. Again, I was sharing this earlier, bottled and bond is a government requirement. Not that you have to make something called bottled and bond, but if you do call it bottled and bond, it's 4 years or more age. It's 100 proof exactly. It's a straight bourbon.
Great example of government overreach right there.
Yeah, and the reason being that they did this is that back in the late 1800s, the government jumped in because people were distilling all sorts of stuff that wasn't safe, right?
What part of the 1800s are we talking about? Like 1865 or?
I think I want to say 1890s.
Okay.
Yeah. Post the Reconstruction era.
Yeah, that was
or after Reconstruction fell apart.
I was going to say that was a great time for certain people in this country.
Yeah, the storm's coming in.
It got dark real fast. Jamie.
So we started with Heaven Hill, but actually what I wanted to what's in your glass now, let's finish it while I ramble on just for a brief moment. What I actually wanted to have each of you guys taste is a whiskey from a distillery called Mythology. And Mythology is it's a Colorado distillery. It's now found in Steamboat Springs. And it initially started in Denver. It was created just a few years ago.
I feel like I've been there. Where was the?
It's north of Steamboat Springs.
No. When they were located in Denver.
Yeah, I bet you did. I don't remember. I think it was Rhino area.
Yeah,
or somewhere.
Highlands.
Highlands, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So you have. So they moved it out to Steamboat a few years ago, and so what you're drinking here is a barrel proof bourbon. So that means it's also higher proof. So this one comes in, Jamelle. That's a stiff pour because this is 120 proof. So sip it slow. But yeah, so Mythology is a blender. So the difference being that blending tends to have a negative connotation. It's like Canadian blended whiskeys, right? You just pour in, but actually blending in the European and like the English, Scotch whiskey tradition is well regarded. It's an art form. You're taking like the best quality products from different barrels. You're assessing the flavor profile of each, and then you're essentially putting it into the right proportions, barreling it, and then pouring it. And so Mythology, like many new distilleries, the challenge with making whiskey is that it takes years to get it to age.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you're going to start a distillery, you're sitting there, if you're only producing whiskey, you're almost waiting 8 years, 7, 8 years to make your best bottles, 2 to 5 years, 2 to 4 years to really put anything on the shelf if it's going to be somewhat decent. But what a lot of places do, and I think Mythology is determined to stay as blenders, not creating their own mash, is they outsource, which again has a negative connotation, but frankly, a ton of whiskey makers in this country do this. They take their juice, if you will, from Indiana, and there's a couple of big distributors that create these blend or the various barrels, and then the blenders from this distillery, for example, come out and they look at and they taste these, and then they pick, like, we're going to take these 5 back and we'll blend it. And so then they do their own barreling process. And so you can actually create lots of really unique tasting, good quality tasting whiskeys from the blending process. So Mythology's blenders.
So this OG place in Indiana, would it be anywhere near South Bend?
It's not. I actually, I'll have to look up precisely where it is. I think it's more central.
In case you didn't know, you go into Notre Dame. That's why.
I did. Yeah. There's no flags or shirts. Or
Yeah, we
hats
have.
I'm wearing.
We've made it, I think, 20 minutes into the podcast.
I know. I haven't even mentioned it. If we were at the
Yeah.
bar downstairs, you would have known right away.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So anyways, Mythology, cool place. Check them out in Steamboat Springs. We had a great little tour out there.
Shout out to Steamboat.
Steamboat's a cool town. So this one here is their, it's called, it's just their bourbon, but this one is a barrel proof, which means that it's not cut with water after it comes out of the barrel. So it's coming out at the proof point that it's found at in the barrel. So this one is...
What am I tasting here?
Well, I haven't tasted it yet with you, so we'll give it a proper pour and a proper smell and then some taste. What do you think? It's going to be stronger.
It is a little stronger.
Yeah, this is almost 60% alcohol.
It's woody. Oh, I forgot I'm supposed to swish.
Yeah, you actually, we've been drinking a little bit of whiskey before it, but your first taste, you're not actually trying to do any tasting. You're just letting your body like respond to the fact that you've put this in. So we'll give you a taste here in a minute, Jared. So yeah, Mythology Distilling, cool place. Check it out. They do a bunch of really cool blends. But yeah, let's where we left it was with media as entertainment. Let me unpack your question a little bit, Jared. Why are you asking that question, and what is the thinking behind where you're coming from with that question?
No, there wasn't like a reason. I just think that the word media means something different depending on the person that you ask. And oftentimes, I believe people segment portions of the media thinking that they're different, but they probably have more in common with each other than most people think. And so we can categorize music, and I could say classical music. I could say the blues. I could say rock. I could say hip hop. I could say, EDM. I could say country. But they're all music.
Mm-hmm.
But if I walked up to a country music fan and told them to listen to classical music, they would, I'm generalizing here, but they would say they have nothing in common, but they both use notes. They both use instruments.
Yeah.
They both have a mathematical process to go with
There's
it.
13 different notes you can really do and change the octave. That's it.
That's it. It's all
Hugo's
music.
also a musician.
Okay, so that reference made sense to you, right?
Yeah.
My dad plays the guitar, and one of the things he oftentimes talked about is he's from Mississippi. everybody who played the guitar played the blues. And then things have got recategorized as different genres. And he goes, well, the pentatonic scale is
Still the same.
literally the same.
Yeah.
It's the same chords. So you just rearranged them differently.
Right.
So what I
Right.
would say is, instead of categorizing you're now part of the media, what I wanted to do was demystify the media. The media's job is to capture our attention, regardless if I'm telling you that the fireplace is hot or I'm making up that, there's a monster in my house right now. It doesn't matter whether
Right.
it's true
Right.
or not true, but I have to deliver it in a
Right.
way to capture somebody's attention, which is the
Yeah.
actual definition of entertainment.
So
Right.
But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
No,
off.
you're
So to kind of close the loop on it is, you asked him, how does it feel to be a part of the media? And I agree with that because I was interested in hearing what your response is. But in my opinion, anybody who puts content out for public consumption is the media,
Right.
because their job is to entertain. Now, whether
Right.
we talk about what genre of entertainment they're in,
Yeah.
that's a different story.
Yeah.
But the news to
Needs-
music to
it all needs-
podcast, it's
it
all
all needs to be entertaining.
leads to be, your job is to be entertained,
To be
So-
entertained.
to entertain somebody.
Speaking so on that note of entertainment in the media, how do we feel about sports media, sports entertainment? And the reason I'm bringing that up is because of the Nick Saban comments that came out recently, right?
Yeah. So let me get to your question for listeners. The Nick Saban comments, I believe, and please embellish or add to this, but Nick Saban, of course, longtime coach of Alabama football, just retired this past year. He's an older guy. I mean, relatively speaking, he's probably a bit over 70, I think.
Yep.
Coached for a long ass time, incredibly successful, probably will go down as one of the top couple of coaches in the history of
Probably
college
the
football,
best.
maybe the best. Yeah. He was recently made some comments to Congress, which I believe is part of a congressional testimony about name, image, likeness, the role of money in college athletics. And he was lamenting it, and he basically said, like, one of the reasons that he got out is, he brought up this anecdote of, my wife and I would bring our players over to the house for Sunday dinners. And she was, I don't understand this sound effect. Can you break that down for us real fast?
Yeah, it's a cavern. It's drips.
This is Nick Saban's career, just feeling like he's in this cavern. Yeah, we'll let the listeners decide. But so Nick Saban's on in this testimony. He basically says his wife came to him and she's like, "Oh, Nick, the players, they only care about money. They don't care about my burgers and my chicken and my mashed potatoes and whatever else she was serving." And I don't think she said that, and he didn't say that. But I think that was kind of his takeaways. His wife was like lamenting the fact that it seemed to be more about the money.
Yeah, she was saying that why are you even having people over to the house anymore? They don't care about the personal connection or developing the kid. They care about the money.
Yeah, so let's open that one up. I think Nick we talked a little bit about this a few shows ago, but I think it continues to be a critical topic. And Jared, you've been involved in college athletics on the coaching side as well. So I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more. But I think it goes beyond just the practical issue about money or not. We're talking about 18 to 22-year-old kids who have an opportunity to be part of an institution or organization that could be and hopefully is devoted to some learning beyond what happens on a court.
And that's where I'll stop you, because it's not.
Right. So tell me more.
It is not. Just think about this. Most coaches don't get fired based off of their graduation rate.
Do any?
Okay, so let's start there. Number two, being ineligible for a football game or a basketball game as an NCAA athlete, you can manufacture grades. I'm not saying cheat, but basically the NCAA judges you based off of your progression towards a degree. Your eligibility isn't based off of if you graduate. It's just if you are consistently progressing. So let's take basketball, for example. If you are a junior in college, playing at a big-time school, you're not getting drafted. You're
Too
not
old.
getting
You're
drafted.
too old. Yeah, you're too old.
Because at the end of the day, they're forcing me to go to college
Right.
for a year. Let's be honest.
Yep.
And if I know I'm forcing you to go for a year, and regardless if we win one game or go undefeated and win the national championship, you're getting drafted. Why would I ever put you in a class?
Right.
And then we spin this narrative to say, well, athletes can't be smart. But you can't put everybody in the box. I guarantee there are smart athletes. There are average athletes. There is dumb athletes.
Was it Josh Dobbs?
Yeah. He's a rocket scientist.
Literal rocket scientist.
Literal. And
Tennessee,
so,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you got to think, whether I play football, basketball, any of the sports, the revenue generating sports, the amount of time that I'm spending in practice, how could I become a doctor?
Right.
Because your scholarship isn't worth 4 years. It's worth 1 year. You re-sign your scholarship
Every year.
every single year. So before the NIL, a coach could tell you anything they wanted to tell you. You show up there on campus, you sign your 1 year contract. If you miss a pass, I can take that money away.
Mm-hmm.
If I fail a class, I can take that money away. If I get injured,
Yeah.
I can take that money away. And you're asking, how do I wrap this into what Nick Saban's comments is? There's a difference between the haves and the have-nots.
Right.
The haves had enough infrastructure to keep everyone eligible, everyone happy with the best facilities. Because if you're in the state of Alabama,
The only thing
there is no pro team.
Right.
And all of that money is going either to Alabama
Or Auburn.
or to Auburn.
Right.
most to Alabama.
Mostly to Alabama. If we look at a place like California, if I graduated from USC, I may also be a Rams fan.
Mm-hmm.
I may also have Laker tickets. My money is
Dodgers.
spread. Dodgers tickets.
Clippers.
My money is spread.
Go to the beach.
And do I want to give
Bruins.
enough effort to skate underneath the radar, because those kids were always getting paid? They were always getting paid. Maybe it wasn't in a handout. A lot of it wasn't in a handout, but it could have been a job that happened on campus. It could have been, hey, you can show up to our campus and you don't have to worry about driving or eating or whatever it is, because we have the best weight facility. We have the best stadium. We have the best of the best. You didn't have to, but for those coaches to say, hey, they don't want my relationship. The relationship was transactional from the beginning. From the beginning. So now when you get NIL and you pay these folks, because at the end of the day, Nick Saban makes more than every pro coach.
Right.
And I was gonna to that point. I was gonna say it's no fun when the rabbit got the gun, right? So now that the kids or the athletes have buy-in or have
Horse in
they
the
have their
race.
stakeholder in the fight now, right? And so now
Yeah.
that they have some skin in the game, it's just like, well, shit. Why would I come to Alabama why do I got to listen to coach tell me that I can't play until I'm a senior when I can go to UAB and still get a check?
Absolutely. And look, and they were getting paid before this.
Right.
They were getting paid before, for you to think.
In some form or fashion.
I always say this. There are no Cinderella stories in college sports. There aren't.
Yeah, tell me more.
There aren't, because you got to just think, for you to somehow get better players than a school bigger than you, something had to have happened wrong for those kids to decide to go there.
Right.
Not taking away from coaching, but talent wins.
It does.
And I believe coaching, talent versus talent, you can very easily see a good coach versus a bad coach.
Correct.
I believe a good coach can take an average team and make them good. But Nick Saban couldn't take the worst football team in America and make them a national champion.
He didn't. He was at LSU. He was at Michigan State. He had some good teams there, but
Are they paying athletes at Notre Dame, Josh?
oh yeah, they're paying athletes. Fuck yeah, they're paying athletes.
But here's the thing with Notre Dame, to support you on the other side, but you're not paying the same rate
Right.
Because if you think about it, there's only 4 or 5 schools that even get 5 stars.
Right.
Most of those 4 or 5 schools are in horrible places to live.
Mhm.
Tuscaloosa,
But if you give,
Jackson, Mississippi,
if you give schools
Tallahassee.
that now these boosters that are CEOs of, is there more money in the state of Texas or Alabama?
Athens, Georgia.
Baton Rouge. Yes, there is more money in Texas.
Okay, so if I'm Nick Saban, I would get out. Because
Columbus,
at the end
Ohio.
of the day, there's oil money down there that they can now legally,
Yeah.
instead of having
Yeah.
to go through the loopholes, pay. And
Right.
for him to say it's wrong, it was the opposite. Because if you look at how the media deals went down, most people won't call out, and I think Saban's great, but most people won't call out the most glaring thing. Alabama wasn't good until Saban. Okay, but we could also say Alabama also wasn't good until ESPN renegotiated the SEC contract where they made $50 million a year and everybody else made $20 million a year.
Yeah.
Quantify that over 10 years. If I made $30 million a year more than the next school, it didn't matter how good the coach was because I had more resources, whether it came in cold hard cash or facilities. At the end of the day, I was
Better
inserted.
better college town, Columbus, Ohio, or Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
I haven't been to either. I've lived in Alabama. I didn't spend any time in Tuscaloosa. I've driven through Ohio. I'm going to go with Tuscaloosa.
I will say this. I've never been to Columbus, Ohio. But as much as I just talked about the SEC, a game in Tuscaloosa is like I've gone 3 times. It's a once in a lifetime situation. Like
I've been in Auburn.
it's for real. It's for real.
I went to a
different.
UGA game. It wasn't in Athens. It was in Atlanta. And I'm born in California, but I'm from Colorado. And that was by far the most white people I've ever seen in my entire life.
I'm glad you brought that. I'm going to actually, let me flip this. Not flip it. Actually, let's stick on this for a minute because I think this has another intersection that's relevant. What is the intersection of everything we've just discussed with regards to NIL, with regards to money in the game, with regards to Nick Saban, and race?
I'm going to let you start out with this.
Well, you guys already know what I'm going to say.
Yeah, I want to hear it.
White supremacy.
Tell me more, though. Yeah, I mean, I think that.
No, I mean, I think
there's a through line here.
That's I honestly, there's a through line there, but just the fact that, in all due respect to Nick Saban, because I do think that he's done some good things for some good people down there.
The GOAT.
But the fact that now all of a sudden these black kids that are coming to Alabama are making profits, or actually putting a little bit of money in their pocket off of the millions upon millions of dollars that they have made over the years, that was going directly into his pocket, or going to create a brand new weight room, or going to boosters, or going to whomever the hell. Now all of a sudden it's an issue because these black kids are putting money in their pocket. I think is glaring, right? Like the fact that 5 years ago, Nick Saban was just like, yeah, I'm getting all the best recruits and I'm doing this and I'm putting all these kids out. And then now 5 years ago, he can't stand the heat because these kids aren't being as exploited as they have been, speaks volumes. Mm-hmm. And the fact that 75 to 85% of the kids that are in the program are black says a lot to me.
I think,
please.
And my point is, I believe there's good coaches out there. I'm not calling Nick Saban a bad person because I don't know his character, and I would be wrong. So this is a broad statement, not directed at one person.
Agreed.
Because he could be the greatest person in the world, and I just want to acknowledge that. And I actually have a lot of respect for Nick Saban. I think he's the GOAT.
Fair, yeah.
I threw that out there. College sports is and will forever be a business. As a college coach, what's more important to you? Winning an SEC championship or graduating everybody?
Championship.
And so the system is built for you not to prioritize academics. Right. But as black people, it's because we're the dumb athlete. We're the dumb athlete, so there's no way we can put him in that class. Your coaches have more influence over your class schedule, your daily life, where you live than is told in the media. Your coach tells you exactly the path. You're going to have this major.
Communication.
You're going to do this.
Right.
And part of being a coach oftentimes is being able to negotiate at universities to ensure that your kids can be in a safe major, the
Right.
ones you're worried about.
Leisure studies.
And don't get me wrong, there's the asterisks. There's the Dobbs that
Sure,
I'm a
sure.
rocket scientist, and regardless of what you tell me, I won't
Samari
sign here
Roll.
unless. But
Right.
there only a couple of people
Marcus Freeman.
get that pass, even if you have the ability to do
Right.
so. And so I would argue that the reason they're upset is one word that coaches use, and now they have to look in the mirror: culture.
Culture.
Because you sit in somebody's living room and you promise that kid, hey, ma'am, I will take care of your son. I will make sure he graduates. He doesn't get in trouble. He works hard. And in the meantime, we're going to win a couple football games. Doesn't that
Right.
sound like a recruiting pitch?
Yeah.
Right.
But when they get on campus, it's like, look, you're not getting paid. I'm paying you to be here. You mess up, I'll take your money and kick you out. And anything I tell you to do, you have to do it.
Let me ask you. Yeah, you go, Hugo.
Yeah.
I
Let
wanna
me
know.
ask this question, and this is not me saying it, but it is a common question. But how can this be exploitative if we're paying them?
Because you're exploiting them, because your goal is never to graduate them. And anytime you have this argument, and that was the point I was trying to get to, the argument always ends with, well, why the hell do we need to pay them? We're giving them an education. You're not, because you can cut that dude at any moment. He misses a
Right.
tackle, you can cut him. So you're not paying for his education, because you're not.
Right.
And even if they do get a degree, it may not be the degree they wanted to get. A great example is architecture. When I was an athlete, we had a player who wanted to do architecture. Architecture labs at the university I went to were at 7 o'clock at night. What also happens at 7 o'clock at night?
Basketball games.
So you can't be an architect.
Right.
So how are you paying for my education? If I get an academic scholarship, I get to pick my major.
You can also work. You can also go
I
get
can
a
also
job.
work
Right.
and make money.
Right.
You can't do those things. And as
Yeah.
long as you have that control, you can pay money under the table, and
Yeah.
you have no risk of losing anybody. So it's separated things extremely quickly.
I'm curious to
Thanks.
know, Hugo, as an alum and a supporter of a school, how do you feel, or what do you think about the state of NIL, or even paying college players who come to such a great academic institution as Notre Dame, right? This isn't, I don't know, I'm just throwing out a school, South Florida, right? It's Notre Dame. It's
Right.
known to be a good fucking school.
It is.
I mean, hell, Rudy went there.
He actually didn't until the very last 6 months. He wasn't good enough.
Transfer portal.
Rudy
Oh.
to
He
the
transferred from Holy Cross across the street, which is a cool, but it's a 2-year school. Nail that question for me, just so I make sure I'm answering it.
How do you think NIL, the transfer portal, all that has an effect on a school that is an academic powerhouse such as Notre Dame?
Well, I'm going to try to answer that, but to even tie it to this conversation, Notre Dame, I think what it does well is I think it does value the goal of a 4-year degree, not just in words but in action. Like, people who follow Notre Dame follow pretty much every player on the roster, maybe with exception of walk-ons. And at the end of every season, there's always like discussion boards about which kid left, which kid's going. And I think the question within like the fan base that is pretty diligent in following it is always like, did he get a raw deal? Was he left out on the curb? Did he, get knocked off his scholarship? And I think that anytime there's that question, the follow-up has been they continued him on an academic scholarship through the rest of his time. He was injured as a sophomore. He still has 3 years of eligibility. We're going to honor him completing his degree and continue a scholarship. I think that's a big investment, and I think that when you see that, it does give a little credence to this kind of question of, is Notre Dame committed to its athletes? My experience would be similar. I think that Notre Dame has really tried to balance the need of being, for a number of reasons, its legacy, its tradition, the financial benefit of being a prestigious football program, with also being a school that tries to put its money where its mouth's at when it comes to student athletes.
Yeah, a school like Michigan would never do that.
No, I mean, let's talk about Michigan in a second. You can pick whatever background noise you want for that. But
the toilet flushing.
I think for Notre Dame, I mean, one of my roommates down the hallway was Chinedu Ndukwe. Like, all of the players for the football team, Brady Quinn lived in the dorm next door until he was a junior. Like, they made people who are athletes be part of the student body. And I think that was a good commitment. And, Chinedu played football for the Bengals and for the Raiders for 6 games, and then his knee was gone, but he finished 5-6 years in the league, but he's gone on to business. And his brother is like a former Navy veteran who is like doing nuclear submarine stuff. And like there is a value, I think, of kids who have chosen to go to Notre Dame, that they understand that there will be some academic pieces. And I think one of the biggest challenges at Notre Dame, and I don't want to maybe open up this to even a bigger conversation about education and race, but I mean, it was, and this is where I was at in life at that point. I grew up in a primarily white and Latino community. My high school had, some diversity, but not much.
Shout out Josh's dad.
Yeah, who worked there. At Notre Dame, if you saw somebody who was black, it was a pretty common assumption they were a basketball or football player. And Notre Dame, I think, as an institution, has worked hard to diversify, but this gets to bigger questions about race, access, equality, equity in schools, academic preparedness, college. I mean, this is a loaded piece. But I think the place at Notre Dame, in any big institution, I think they've tried to, but it's run by Catholic priests. How many black Catholic priests do you know?
In the United States?
Yeah.
Joke.
Right, exactly. But right.
In Africa, they're
right.
all over the place.
It is still an institution run by white people.
Yeah.
Because it is built to be
Or
run.
every institution.
Correct. And that's where we're at. And
white supremacy.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot to unpack.
There's a lot. And I don't even need to bring up the second half to converse about it. But I think even institutions that are devoted to serving the student athlete population, arguably in better ways than other places, still sit in a larger context of almost like a weird piece of like, well, this is us fulfilling the mission of diversifying our population, is using the student athlete population.
Oh no, that's a huge deal.
How many black people were walking around campus at Michigan when you were up there, Jamie?
It was like, I don't want to say segregated, but
You can say
to
it.
some degree, like, South Quad was like athlete housing, then like North Campus, which was far away, had like the music school, which were like concentrate, like some of my friends like were concentrated up there. But I would say you could walk and not see anyone, and then you could see like
A little different from Philly.
yeah, but people hang together. You could end up seeing a lot of people, but
Yeah.
Jared, what were your thoughts?
Well, there's kind of two thought processes, right? There's the sports conversation,
Right.
when you talked about diversity through student athletes.
Yep.
But then there's also the enrollment issue, and they're the same issue, but two separate talking points.
Yeah. Maybe for tonight we stay on the sports
Let's stay
side
on the
of
sports
it.
side.
Okay. I think what is problematic about the whole student athlete and using black people for the student athlete kind of promotion is they become a face that they never asked to be.
Mm-hmm.
I'm now the face of diversity for this organization that really doesn't care if I graduate or not, as long as I score a bucket.
Right.
And a couple of examples of this. I won't say what school or where, who I heard it from, where I saw it. But I know of a coach one time that had a kid who played for him at a university, played basketball. The kid couldn't read. And so immediately when you hear me say that, you're like, how did he get accepted? Well, the coach got him accepted. So I remember talking to this coach, and I asked, hey, so this kid is really, really good, but it sounds like he's struggling academically. What are you guys doing to help him? This athletic department makes millions of dollars. I'm pretty sure somebody could be his tutor and help him to read. This person told me the coach's response was, we're not paying him to go to school to figure out how to read. The less he has to concern with that, the more effort he can give me on a basketball court, because he knows that this is his only ticket. So why would I invest in that area when I know I can use that as a motivator to play harder?
Yeah.
Let me hop in there real quick.
Yep.
I think, and this is kind of where I wanted to steer the conversation, but I think what you just said is very important or very key to the conversation. Because there are coaches, there are programs that are more invested in the winning than they are in the individual.
Agree. And that wasn't a blanket statement I was saying. I'm not saying every coach thinks this way. And I started that with the saving comment.
Now,
definitely nobody ever at Notre Dame ever.
Never.
No. Without
definitely
dispute.
not.
Yep.
However, and we've talked about this before on the show, but that brings me to Coach Prime. I think that moms, dads, people want to send their kids to Coach Prime because he's definitely trying to win. But I think there is a belief that coach is going to
human.
Yes, he cares about the human, and I also think that it is frowned upon that he's a black head coach doing this because he can have a connection with his black student athletes that some coaches cannot have.
Can I ask this question for? If I may.
Go for it.
And this is not. I'm just going to represent one of the common criticisms in the media, pulling this full circle of Coach Prime, which again is a white-driven media, is that is not the take on Coach Prime. That the narrative in one media space is that he is there for himself. But from the black perspective, that I think is the different, we've talked about this, there's a different feeling within the community. Can we break that down? Because
is that
a fair question?
Absolutely, and I want to be very clear. I'm not speaking for black people,
the entire community, but
large,
in our
right.
fair.
But for me, I have two boys, and say they defy the the science and they become 6'2", because my kids are not going to be that tall. They become 6'2".
It's possible.
240 pounds, and for whatever reason, they get a scholarship offer to go to CU.
Yeah.
Or they get a scholarship offer to go to Florida State. They get a scholarship offer to go to Notre Dame. I'm likely to say, hey, let's look at Notre Dame or CU because the head coach is black.
I have some additional context.
Yeah, please.
And you came from the parent perspective.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go from a coaching perspective. When's the last time you've seen a job application for a head coach for a Division I Power 5 school?
Never.
They don't exist. So then what's the next logical question? So how do you get hired? You have to know the person who is doing the hiring.
Right.
So let's just throw this out there. If I went to med school, I became a doctor, the likelihood of my friends being doctors are low or high?
High.
If I work in education, and for the last 10 years, I've only worked with teachers, what's the likelihood that my friend group will consist of teachers?
Very high.
Very high.
Very high. If I am a white coach from one of the 3 or 4 coaching trees, because use Belichick, Saban's and Belichick's trees. That means every successful coach either coached for Saban or Belichick. How many of them were black?
Right.
Did you know Tony Dungy almost put every black coach in the NFL? So it doesn't matter if Prime is for himself, for black people, for white people, for money, for winning. The window, the point of entry to get in the door requires me to have a network of like-minded or similar interest people. How does this relate to academics? Well, as a black person, maybe the white person coach has my best interest in mind. Maybe they don't. But if Deion's the only choice that I got from a Power 5, and I think he's doing an incredible job.
Yeah.
Maybe I can at least try to put some support system in to see more people of color in head coaching jobs. Because you know what a lot of white coaches do to you? And I have a lot of white coaching friends, very good friends I communicate with all the time. One of my mentors is a white coach. I love all people. But I can't tell you the countless conversations I've had with white coaches to say, hey, I know the X's and O's, but I just can't talk that stuff to them. Will you go over here, black coach, and relate to them? And so then when you think about it and you watch the telecast, it's on TV, you're streaming it, however you watch your football or your basketball, it's always the mastermind McDaniels figure white coach and the guy that riles up the locker room black coach. And then when it comes to an interview, it's like, well, this guy was calling plays and you were the hype man. Nobody wants the hype man because the person who owns the coaching tree decides who gets the job for the next one.
I just want you to do the white voice one more time.
Hey, coacher, look, I can draw it up for you, but you got to go in there and get them going. Like, that's literally, those are countless conversations. And that's part of the narrative that nobody wants to talk about, right? It's not that black people only want to give their folks to Coach Prime. Some black people don't even like Coach Prime. I got family who went to Jackson State. They're pissed that Coach Prime left.
Yeah.
But if he's a winner, maybe we can develop more winners because it's not about aptitude or ability or skill. It's about access.
So,
thank you.
Yes, thank you, Jared. Getting towards the end of the conversation here. I'll defer to Hugo because you do a great job of closing out. So,
I think there's the joy of this, the challenge of this, this medium, is that it's hard to always close good conversations. Like, we can keep going. Right, we just brought up education, we brought up hiring, we brought up access. We didn't even talk about. We had a couple of categories,
and we talked about whiskey.
We talked about whiskey,
my favorite topic,
which is Any just quick updates on the mythology?
It's definitely stronger, but I like it. It's still smooth.
It's smooth.
Still smooth.
I was gonna say that. I don't know if it's stronger. It's definitely smoother, I guess.
It's strong. It's strong but smooth, and that's the right balance.
Yeah.
And that will be my summary of this podcast. This was a strong but smooth conversation about some really interesting, challenging topics, and to even take it one full more step or one additional step further, to kind of bring it full circle, and not to, Jared, I'm sorry if this brings up some memories, but the original guest of tonight's podcast was actually, we were going to engage in some conversations about equity, inclusion, diversity.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a really good conversation about that in the space of, especially when we got into the conversation about sports.
What did you learn today, Josh? Or were you going to take from today's podcast?
That is a really good question, and we'll close with that. The conversation about media as entertainment, I think, what I learned is that Jared, you're a cool guy, and this is a great conversation, and I appreciate your a kind of mutual facilitation tonight. I think we all built on this conversation, but I think you have the ability to put some complex ideas very succinctly, and I appreciate that. So I learned who you are and a little bit more about you at least, and learned that you would be welcome on this podcast at any point. So thank you for joining.
I really appreciate the kind words. Hopefully I didn't talk too much, but this was such a cool experience.
You talked way too much, but it's all right.
I mean, I don't like you.
It's fine.
So I think we need to close with Biscuit and Tex.
What'd you learn, bro?
Well, the one, I didn't know Indiana is a hub for whiskey.
Damn it,
Yeah.
that was mine. I got to come up with something else.
I think that was a huge thing. But I'm going to shout out our producer. Not only did he get us up and going and had some good backup noises, but
There it is. There it is.
it was I've never really explored a white person who went to a PWI who also had the same perspective, or I guess awareness, that the campus may have been segregated, and it was clear that folks lived in one side or the other, and you don't really hear that spoken out loud. Maybe I believe people recognize it more than they admit.
Right.
But it wasn't an opinion, but the fact of his experience made me pause and think a little bit. So I appreciated that to kind of
Yeah, I appreciate
unpack that.
All right, so mine is like what I learned, but also I thought we were at like the precipice, and Jamelle's right, like this conversation is coming to an end, but the precipice of like, or the intersection of hiring practices in education. We like kind of like danced around those issues, but I was just back in the school system for the first time in like 2.5 years, and reflecting on like the archetypes that fill different roles, like who's a special education teacher, who's an athletic director, who's a culture leader, who's an instructional leader, who's on the ground working with kids.
Yep.
And there's a lot of overlap with the education conversation. So it was like musing and learning along the way.
Thank you for that, Jaime.
Yeah.
Also, thank you, Jared. For me, I think one of the things that I learned was that Rudy didn't go to Notre Dame except for the last 6 months or whatever.
Shocking.
Shocking.
They don't really elevate that point in the movie. It's a subtle. I thought Holy Cross College and Notre Dame, when I first saw Rudy, were kind of the same thing. It was just like the other side of campus, but they're actually different institutions. One's essentially an associate's degree community college.
Did not know that.
Yeah.
Also, shout out to Steamboat. Never been up there, but I definitely want to get up there.
Hey, I ain't gonna lie. I ain't even gonna hold you. I love Steamboat.
I heard Steamboat is like the weather in Steamboat is different than the rest of Colorado because it's like a high desert type of thing.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful place.
It's just a cool town. Like, it's not like I wouldn't live in Steamboat or like, but you take your family up there for a weekend.
From what I understand, like the skiing in Steamboat is different from the skiing in Breckenridge.
It is. Yeah, it is. It's a beautiful spot. So you learned about Steamboat.
Yeah. Also, I appreciate the conversation and the ability to have, kind of like what you were saying, a strong but smooth conversation. So, one, I learned about Steamboat. I learned about Rudy, but I also learned that it is possible in today's day and age to have a strong but smooth conversation.
Yep.
Right on, man. That's it. That's the way to close it. So we're gonna play it out with this this track.
Nice synthesizer going.
Hey, our producer's killing it.
Yeah.
Well,
We'll talk about a raise.
Well, let's pay him double what we're paying him now.
Oh, well, there's not a we in that yet. Dude, this could be our closing music.
Nah,
I'll
make something better. This is just the like factory track. I'll make something. We'll record something.
Shout out to all our listeners. If you want to get on the show, comment in the comments down below.
Yeah, the Campfire Conversation, Season 2 Kickoff. Thanks, guys, for listening. Have a great day or night.